The night on campus seemed ordinary. Students heading back to their dorms, security watching over in silence. But when one student walked toward the dorm entrance, everything changed. A police K-9, calm all evening, suddenly lunged forward and blocked his path. No matter how much the handler pulled, the dog refused to move. Whispers spread through the crowd. Why this student? Why now? And what was hidden inside that backpack that the dog sensed instantly? What the officers uncovered next left the entire courtyard frozen in disbelief. Here's the full story, but before we jump in, tell me in the comments where in the world are you watching from, and make sure you're subscribed. The evening was quiet across the campus grounds, the kind of stillness that often settled once the sun dipped and students disappeared behind brick walls and glowing windows. The dormitory courtyard was nearly empty except for one figure approaching with hurried steps. A young student, dressed plainly, carried a backpack slung tightly across his shoulders as though protecting something inside. His pace was unusual, neither casual nor rushed, but somewhere in between, with a nervous rhythm that did not match the calm atmosphere of the night. Just beyond the dorm entrance, a police K-9 unit was stationed. The officers had been called in earlier that week to assist campus security after a string of strange incidents. Missing items, reports of forced doors, and rumors of someone slipping into areas off limits after hours had rattled both staff and students. For days, security cameras had failed to catch anything clear. Tonight, however, the officers decided to keep patrols close to the dormitory, the very heart of student life. The police dog, a trained German shepherd named Rex, had been calm all evening. He sat beside his handler, watchful but relaxed. That calm broke the instant the student neared the dorm entrance. Without warning, Rex rose sharply to his feet, ears pinned back, body stiff and a low growl forming deep in his throat. His eyes locked directly on the student, and then before anyone could react, Rex lunged forward, blocking the entrance completely. Students nearby froze at the sudden commotion. Some pulled out their phones, whispering in confusion. The young man stopped in his tracks, face paling as he realized the dog's focus was entirely on him. The handler tightened the leash, but Rex refused to move. His growl turned into sharp, insistent barks, each one echoing through the courtyard. It was clear this was no ordinary alert. Rex was not reacting to random nerves or passing smells. This was the kind of response officers were trained never to ignore. What could possibly be inside that backpack? Why had Rex chosen this moment to raise the alarm? The officer ordered the student to step aside. His hands shook as he tried to explain, but Rex barked louder, pulling toward the bag as though it contained something dangerous or forbidden. The tension rose quickly, the still night now filled with the sound of barking, murmuring students, and the heavy steps of additional officers rushing toward the scene. The student's posture was strange. He clutched his backpack tighter, refusing to set it down even as officers demanded he release it. His face held not just fear, but also something else, something unreadable, a mix of guilt, worry, and maybe even desperation. The question burned in everyone's minds. What was he carrying that Rex had sensed instantly? The officers stepped in, circling cautiously. Rex pressed forward with his nose, then sat firmly in place, refusing to let the student pass into the dorm. To officers, this was a definitive sign. Whatever was in the bag needed to be checked immediately. But before the bag could be opened, something else caught attention. A faint sound, almost too soft to notice, was coming from inside. At first it seemed like static or the shuffle of papers, but Rex's ears perked sharply, head tilting with precision as the sound repeated. It was not random at all, it was rhythmic, distinct. The young man was finally pulled aside as officers carefully unzipped the top. Rex's nose pressed closer, but his handler kept him steady. The opening revealed nothing at first, just stacks of notebooks and a jacket crammed on top. But the sound grew clearer now, pulsing faintly from beneath. Officers removed the upper layers slowly, every student in the courtyard straining to see what would be revealed. The tension was unbearable. The student's face shifted into something unreadable. Neither relief nor fear, but something much deeper, as if he already knew what was coming next. The officer reached deeper inside. His hand froze as his fingers brushed against something unexpected. Something soft, small, and faintly warm. He paused, exchanged a quick glance with his partner, then carefully lifted it out. The crowd gasped as the object finally came into view. It was not a weapon. It was not contraband. It was not something mechanical. It was alive. A small movement stirred in the officer's hands. The outline of fur, fragile bones, and trembling breath became visible under the courtyard lights. Students leaned closer, shocked beyond words. Even Rex went silent, his barking replaced with an intense stare as though his instincts had been proven right. But the mystery was far from solved. What was this creature doing in the backpack? Why had the student tried to sneak it inside the dorm? And more importantly, what connection did it have to the string of strange events that had plagued the campus? The young man lowered his head, visibly shaking now as the officers held the fragile being up for all to see. The dots had begun to connect, but the picture was incomplete. Whatever truth lay behind this moment, it was clear it was bigger than just a student breaking dorm rules. Because hidden in that backpack was not just a living creature, it was something that would unravel the entire mystery surrounding the campus. The answers, however, would only come once the officers dug deeper, and Rex, sitting calmly now, seemed to know the story was only just beginning. The courtyard was no longer quiet. Students stood frozen in clusters, whispering as officers huddled around the object they had just pulled from the backpack. The fragile creature shivering under the cold night air was unmistakably a small puppy. Its fur was matted, its ribs faintly visible, and its tiny body trembled as though it had endured days of hunger and fear. Rex, the police dog, shifted his posture, no longer barking but instead watching the pup intently. There was no aggression now, only focus. It was as if Rex knew this moment had revealed a hidden truth. But the discovery of a puppy did not explain the bigger mystery. Why would the student risk sneaking a weak, malnourished animal into the dorm in such secrecy? And how did this tie to the strange disturbances that had unsettled the campus for weeks? The officers questioned the young man again. His voice cracked as he tried to explain, yet the words came out in fragments. He spoke of abandoned boxes near the edge of campus, of faint whimpers he had heard on late walks, of the overwhelming guilt he felt when no one believed him. He had tried to rescue one of the animals himself, too afraid to draw attention, too afraid the administration would punish him for breaking rules, but the officers pressed further. Why had Rex reacted with such urgency? Why block the dorm entrance as though danger itself was about to cross the threshold? That was when another sound cut through the courtyard. It came from the backpack still lying on the ground, so faint at first many thought it was the wind. Then it grew louder, unmistakable, more whimpers. The officer quickly unzipped the side pocket. Inside, curled together in a tight knot, were two more puppies, weaker than the first. Their breaths were shallow, their fur damp as though they had been left in the rain. Gasps erupted across the courtyard. The crowd swayed between shock and pity, some covering their mouths, others stepping closer instinctively. Rex lowered his head, sniffing the air, his nose twitching rapidly. 3 puppies, hidden, weak, desperate for survival. But again, why sneak them? Why hide them instead of calling for help? The answer came slowly as the student broke down, his words halting. He had not found these animals by chance. They were part of something much darker. Behind the dormitories, in an old maintenance shed long abandoned by campus staff, he had stumbled across evidence of cruelty, puppies discarded, whimpering inside crates left to die. Someone had been using the shed, someone who thought no one would ever look there. The pieces began to connect. The strange noises reported at night, the missing items, food, blankets that had disappeared from storage rooms, the faint scratches found near back doors. All of it pointed not to thieves or vandals, but to something hidden in plain sight, an underground operation where innocent animals were being neglected, perhaps even sold off. And the student, too afraid to be ignored or punished, had tried to save what he could in silence. Rex had sensed the truth all along. The smell of neglect, the faint cries muffled by the bag, the urgency of lives that could not wait any longer. The officers wasted no time. Guided by the students' trembling words, they followed Rex through the darkened paths to the maintenance shed. The German shepherd pulled at his leash, nose to the ground, body rigid with purpose. The further they walked, the stronger the scent became. When they reached the shed, the truth was undeniable. Behind the half-broken doors lay more crates, each one containing fragile forms barely clinging to life. Puppies, whimpering softly, eyes dull with exhaustion. Some had scraps of food scattered beside them, but most looked as though they had gone days without care. The officers worked quickly, calling in animal rescue units, bringing out blankets, and carrying the weak creatures into the open. Students who had followed stood in silence, their earlier whispers replaced by stunned grief. And through it all, Rex remained at the center, circling the crates, sniffing, barking sharply whenever he found another hidden corner. He refused to leave until every animal was accounted for. By dawn, the shed was empty. The puppies were safe, bundled into transport vehicles heading for urgent care. The student, though shaken, finally breathed with relief, tears streaking his face as he realized the secret he had carried alone was no longer his burden. The campus mystery had unraveled in full. The missing items were explained, food and blankets stolen not for selfishness but for survival. The strange disturbances were no longer ghost stories but the cries of innocent lives hidden in the dark. And none of it would have been uncovered without Rex. The next day, the campus gathered once more, this time not in fear but in gratitude. Officers stood tall at the front steps of the dormitory. The student, though nervous, was acknowledged for his compassion and courage, but it was Rex who stood in the spotlight, calm, alert, and proud in his harness. As the chief officer spoke, he explained how a single dog's instincts had unraveled a chain of hidden events, how persistence had saved lives, and how a silent mystery had been brought to light. The courtyard erupted in applause as a medal was placed on Rex's harness, gleaming under the sun. The dog who refused to let a student pass had not just blocked an entrance. He had opened the door to truth, saved the forgotten, and reminded everyone present of the bond between instinct and justice. Rex had become the hero of the campus. If Rex had not stopped that student, those puppies might never have been found, and you would have missed the moment that left an entire campus speechless. Stories like this drop here first, and you do not want to be the last to see them. So hit like, tap subscribe, and make sure you are here the moment the next story breaks.